Today, I want to make a video going over my personal opinions about job interviewing questions and certain areas that I feel differently about and sort of think when it comes to that. And I will say that these are pretty logical reasonings. Um, And so that is really why I want to make this video and put it on my channel. So, the first thing is when it comes to just it's all about just going through different questions, and there are things I agree with, like a legitimate reason for why you want the job and what you want to get out of the job, and coming prepared for the job, dressing nice, dressing professionally, saying what your strength and weakness is. Um, but there is also some things in which could be perhaps debatable, and I don't necessarily agree. And it begins with a question of a strength. And the formatting of saying the strength, saying what you're strong at, saying what you're really good at, what you have a talent for, and examples would be preferable and would be highly recommended and encouraged, although I don't think that they're necessarily necessary. If you were making a long video or audio recording and you were just spurting out constant facts and information, well, then there would need to be some sort of context around that, some human elements of, getting personal into your own life, because, we can learn very, very well as humans through stories, through telling our story, through giving that example, but it's not necessary. You can just say what you're strong at, and, you know, um, I don't think, it would be good to prove it, but I don't think that you would really need to prove it. And in terms of a weakness, saying what you're weak at a job interview is not sort of, is not, shaming yourself, oh, I'm bad at this and bad at that, but rather because there is a kryptonite of Superman. There is, because, of something that he had to sort of rise above, rise to that challenge, overcome. So an area that is lacking in or weak or needs improvement, that, positive, oh, well, this is something I could, need to work on. This is that area. And then I would just improve upon that when I would go into the job. And then, there's another thing, when you might be asked the question, on your free time, do you do this or that? And, of course, asking that and, answering that in, professional type way where, um, it doesn't have to be, something, not where, it's just, these things are common sense to where you kind of know what would turn somebody off. Um, and where it doesn't have to be just, you know, things that you have accomplished and achieved in, educational sort of um, value. I mean, you can, certainly bring in, definitely the educational things, um, but not everything has to be, be educational, where everything is nothing, nothing is everything. We're going to allow for that, sort of, recreational, saying how you are unique without, you know, unnecessary filters like, oh, this is something that I really enjoy. That's a big part of who I am, but oh, I can't say it because it's not educational. Well, no, 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 no. I think that you can say, for example, some of those things. I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world if you were to say, I enjoy playing video games or I enjoy making videos. Um, no, I, don't think that those things are necessarily going to hurt the chances, hold back the chances for getting the job, and at the worst case scenario, raise a little bit of a red flag. Um, so that's something. And then, there's another thing about, just in terms of dealing with the strengths. Who has told you these strengths? Who has complimented you? Oh, you are so good at this. You're so talented at this. And where, family, um, somebody in, the workforce, sort of, the left brain, if you were to get out into the world, a boss, somebody, of a company, um, that kind of thing, where, they would be giving you compliments like, why does there have to be family on versus with, say, a teacher or a coworker or a coach of some kind? But maybe those two things overlap. Maybe, and this is just a situation where a family member is also a coach, or a mom is also an owner of, say, a bakery, and you work at that bakery, and so that would, really double your chances, and that would be plus the um, benefits. So that would sort of, be the best of both worlds, where you have a family member. And let's, I just want to say that, family knows your ins and outs, how you tick, the good, bad, ugly, your talents, knows you so well and at a very deep level. So, if anything, they would be more, knowledgeable into you and what you're good at, and how you do things very well, all these types of things. And I mean, there is some bias. However, you can see a film where, the mom, where the daughter says, to the mom, well, you're just complimenting me because, you're the mom. But then the mom says something different where, it doesn't have to matter, it doesn't have to be biased, to where, and why exclude family as, less important, or, if you say that would be less professional. If you were saying, at 23 years old, referring to your mom as mommy, well, then, would just, I don't know, wouldn't sound as good. But, of course, why put two things in a category, putting one above the other and making them different? That separation. What if, um, it can really come together? So, your parents, um, people at your workplace, um, world, where it doesn't have to be all about the, work job, where it can be at home as well. Because remember, you also talk about your free time, and it can be spending time with your family or spending time with your friends. And so, if anything, your parents would know you better and have more answers, so many more things to say. Um, and it's just based off of the context in which you were saying it. Like if you were, saying it sort of a, like, saying, my mommy. But if it was just in a, respectable, grown up, reasonable, good professional, type way, then it would be fine. And then the next thing is citing the source of where you got the information. Citing the source. So, if you were graduating from high school, if you were graduating and you were to have somebody in interviewing you asking, you know, who gave you this, great advice, or, what teacher, told you these wonderful things and helped you out along your journey in life, and, got you to this level, motivated, inspired you. Well, if you were to say, Mr. Whoever, then, the only negative would be exposure of that person, exposing that person, giving away that personal detail to what? Somebody sitting in the same room? Now, and even like with therapists, even like when you're a doctor, there are not people, I think like it's called like the paparazzi or something, well, just people with cameras and everything, um people taking notes. They're gonna film the show and then put it out into the whole world because they work for the news. They collect information, going in and asking you questions to where oh, that might be different because you might not want to tell the whole entire world about whoever and name names, because when I make my videos, I certainly don't name the person that I'm talking about and expose them, because it's only right, and the considerate thing to do. I mean, I wouldn't want to sit on a video that's out there in front of the whole entire world where my name is exposed and revealed. But if you're just sitting having a job interview, which is just taking a breath, another, a meeting with somebody else in a private room, and not, say, a interview in front of a audience, which would be more so. Um, and I want to talk about, I'm sure that, if you've seen Cinderella, and I think, there's a scene with the shoe where, she, puts, the shoe on. I don't know, there's a, situation with that where, but point is, one size does not fit all. If you are saying, like, I got this from this person. And the interviewer, for instance, well, maybe had a bad experience. Well, then that's their own experience because, it's not going to be the same for everybody. People are going to, perceive things differently, see things differently, you know, understand, feel differently about people. And that's what I mean, and you never know. You can't read the person's mind, like when you're saying in your interview, don't say this person, like the interviewer thinking, you know oh, I didn't like this person, why bring it up in an interview, and why would that be a negative thing? Because otherwise it would be petty. It wouldn't be really looking at the big picture, and it would be having a reason to, up for concern with hiring somebody just because, oh, I'm the interviewer and I didn't really like the person. I didn't like the person who this person is referring to. So, why would that be um legitimate? Like, that would be so unfair. That would really, really be so unfair. Where it's a matter of really respecting, you know, of where the other person's coming from, of the other person's experience, and, and just putting that aside, putting it aside, um, and, focusing on the person that's getting the job instead of the teacher that the interviewer just did not like, had a bad experience with. Um, and, those are kind of things, needing, just, I think that those are the big things. Unless, and then I want to talk about citing sources. I mean, just to say a teacher, it could be anybody talking about being in an interview setting. Not what I'm doing right now. Not making a video going out into the world. To say, you know, um, I mean, it can depend. I mean, you don't want to, give the person away. But, um, and, you don't need to exactly cite who the person was. But, I think that it's okay. Um, it wouldn't be okay, again, in the reason of um, exposing them, getting too personal where it's not necessary. But, I mean, really getting to know the person, if that would be so meaningful to the person, um, then, then that would be, good reason for simply saying the person's name. And if you were to be perfect, on another note, if you were to be, like super perfectionistic in your mind, about, I need to say this, I need to say this. And if you forget to say something, no biggie, you know, then the person will ask that question. Where it doesn't have to be so high strung and so, so very overwhelming and so frightening. And, if I don't get this right, if I don't get this little detail right, then you know, um, just breathe. take a breath of fresh air. And that is all that I have to say about this. Thank you for tuning in.